Welcome back to the DeCesare Group Podcast. I'm your host, Jim DeCesare, and we're glad you're here. You know, every week we talk about business and economic news right here in South Central Kentucky, and we have a lot of fun along the way. This week, we're excited to have as our guest Todd Stewart, Director of Athletics at WKU. You may have seen the recent headlines about the study that details exactly how much WKU Athletics impacts our local economy. More on that in just a moment, but first, we're so excited to have the DeCesare Group Podcast now on YouTube. Do us a favor and go subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever you listen to podcasts, and you will receive a notification every Monday morning when a new episode drops. The DeCesare Group Podcast is a companion to our newsletter, Soki Economic Development and Business News, which you can subscribe to on our website, thedecesaregroup.com. It's a brief, comprehensive look at economic news right here in South Central Kentucky. Now to our guest. This week, he's been a part of WKU Athletics since 2008 and was named Director of Athletics in 2012. Todd Stewart has made 16 head coaching hires during his tenure and played an instrumental role in elevating WKU Athletics programs to Conference USA on July 1st of 2014. By the summer of 2025, WKU Athletics will have invested over $50 million in capital projects during Stewart's tenure, which has impacted every athletic program. Here's my conversation with WKU Athletic Director Todd Stewart. Todd Stewart, welcome to the DeCesare Group Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jim. Great to be with you.
Man, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about because, you know, we talk about economic development and business development on this podcast a lot, and WKU Athletics is a big part of our economy here in Bowling Green, Warren County, South Central Kentucky. And I know there was a recent economic impact study. Talk a little bit about that and talk about the impact that WKU Athletics has on our economy.
Sure. Well, you know, we always assume that we had an economic impact just given the number of people that come to events and are staying in town and eating at restaurants, and we never really knew what, though. And so fortunately, we partnered with the Bowling Green Convention and Visitors Bureau on this, and they actually have an entire software program where you input data and then it tells you what that is. And so when it was all said and done, you know, we started with obviously the fall sports, football, volleyball, and soccer, and went all the way through baseball and softball. But the economic impact on Bowling Green and Warren County from our sports seasons in 2023, 2024 was $6.5 million, which what that literally means is if WKU Athletics did not exist, then that would be $6.5 million that would not have been spent in Bowling Green.
That is phenomenal. And, of course, you've pretty much spent your whole life in sports. So,
Yeah.
You know, it is a business. Talk a little bit about where you came from, how you came to WKU. I mean, we've gone from the Sun Belt Conference, but you were with the NFL?
I was, yes.
Who did you work for?
I worked for the Colts and the Browns.
All right, we got a Colts fan in the room.
Okay. Yeah, that was, you know, long story short, I was a huge sports fan growing up. Played baseball and basketball in high school, but obviously wasn't good enough to play beyond the high school level. Went to graduate school at the University of Tennessee, which was huge. Those were 2 great years in terms of just me getting a true understanding of what it would take to be successful, honestly. And But I always, growing up in Cincinnati, was a Reds fan and a Bengals fan, and always kind of wanted to work in pro sports, or thought that I did. So when I was at Tennessee finishing up my graduate program there, my second year, I literally sent my resume and a cover letter to every single NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA team, the ATP Tennis Tour, the PGA Golf Tour. I mean, just honestly blanketed the country.
Any professional sport.
Yeah, I just didn't know what the response would be. And most of the responses were the standard, thanks for your interest. We don't have anything right now. We'll keep your resume on file. But then the Indianapolis Colts responded back, and they had a seasonal internship available. And so I took that. I was their seasonal intern for the 1990 season, so I'm dating myself. That was the year Jeff George was the number 1 overall draft pick, so that's how long ago that was. But I was their intern in 1990. Then they hired me full-time in 1991, and I was an assistant in their PR department through 1998, and then left there to go to Cleveland to be the director of communications. So I was the assistant with the Colts, and I was the director of communications for the Browns when they got an NFL team back. You know, they left for Cleveland. They left for Baltimore, I'm sorry. And there were a couple years without a team. And then in 1999, when the Browns came back, then I went there to be their director of communications and was there for 6 years. Then went to the Sun Belt Conference as the associate commissioner. And it's funny the way this has all turned out. One of my roles as the Sun Belt Conference commissioner, working in the Sun Belt Conference office, was I was a liaison to all of the athletic directors in the Sun Belt. And Western Kentucky was in the Sun Belt at the time. And so I got to know Wood Selig really well. And when the decision was made to go to, all this is kind of tied to football, when the decision was made to go to the 1A level, which we now call FBS in football, and add on to the stadium, Wood was expanding his department. And we were talking about it, and ultimately he offered me a job to come up and kind of oversee the entire communications operation and help with, the first year of the new stadium and all that, because that was very similar to what I did in Cleveland, a bigger scale, obviously, in the NFL, but still similar
similar product, yeah.
Right. And so that's the reason why I came here. I never aspired to be an athletic director. I just came here because communications and media relations was my background. And then after 2 years, Wood left and went to Old Dominion, kind of a lateral move, but it was back in his home area.
Right.
It was where he grew up. And then Ross Bjork came in as the AD, and Ross and I got along extremely well. And he promoted me to the senior associate position in the athletic department, which by title made me the number 2 person in the department. That was literally the first time I ever thought about being an AD.
Wow.
And I thought, well, and Ross was ambitious, so I knew he wouldn't be here forever. I thought he'd be here a while. He was only here 2 years, as it turned out. And it's funny because then after 2 years, he left and went to Ole Miss to be the AD. And Gary Ransdell was the president then. And I reached out to him and said, I'd love to be considered for the athletic director job. And so I laugh about it now. He said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to name you the interim, and I'm in no rush to figure this out. You just do the job, and if you have any questions, you let me know. And so I knew what that meant. He wanted to see how I did in the job.
Yeah,
so on one
testing you out.
Right. And so on one hand, it was great because I knew I had a chance. On the other hand, every day felt like Game 7 of the World Series. If I screw anything up, I won't get this job. But fortunately, after 6 weeks of being the interim, he called me up to his office, offered me the job, and 13 years later, here I am talking to you. So it's worked out really well.
And the growth that WKU Athletics have had really over the last 20 years have been just phenomenal. I mean, I remember 08, I think it was 08 when the stadium opened up, the new stadium. And you were part of all that. And we've had a lot of great I say we because I feel like I'm part of the WKU family.
You are.
Yeah. And a lot of success and, bowl games, NCAA appearances. I mean, and we're talking, that's football. Basketball, of course, they had a great year this year. But we can't forget the others with volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, golly, in the top 20 for however many years now.
Well, that's what I really feel as good about as anything. It's just the across-the-board success we've had. I mean, it's not just one sport or just 1 year. I mean, really, and it's because of our coaches and our athletes. But, fortunately, the 12 years I've been the AD, we've won 52 total conference championships. And that's 11 different sport programs have done that. So that across-the-board success is unique.
It is unique. And of course, talking about that economic impact that the BGCVB conducted that study, and how do they track all that? Where does the data come from to input into that program?
Yeah, basically what they need, or they just need the number of people that are coming to town, and then the number of hotel room nights that equates to. And then they have other metrics that basically, and they need to know where they're staying. So you tell them what hotel, how many hotel nights, how many total people, and then they can kind of determine what that equates to with the average food spend as well, and come up with. But it's really just based on hotel and meals. It's not anything else. So
doesn't include the shopping.
No, gas or anything like that's not included. So it's probably more. It's a conservative estimate. It's probably more.
I think the rule of thumb is for whatever the economic impact is, you can kind of triple it.
Well, I like that. So we can say we have a $20 million economic impact.
I think you can. I mean, you might want to talk to the Chamber of Commerce about that, but that's kind of how they do it. So, if we're not counting the gas, we're not counting the shopping, we're not counting the visits to, the Corvette Museum or Lost River Cave, because all of that stuff factors in, or the WKU apparel, the bookstore, right. All of that. If they're only tracking a small portion of it, then I would imagine there's a multiplier on top of that.
I'm sure, because if it's a night, if you spend the night and then the game is not till the next night, then during the day you would think you're going to do those kind of things you mentioned, or go to the mall and spend money. I mean, you're going to do something.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you can tell them that the DeCesare Group said it's a $20 million impact.
I like that. We're gonna start doing that.
So another successful year. We had another bowl game. We had our first NCAA tournament appearance in a few years. WKU volleyball consistently going far, and plenty of other notable accomplishments. Break down how that translates into earned media and the price that can be placed on that type of recognition.
Sure. Well, as you know, I mean, Bowling Green is a wonderful place to live. In terms of media market rankings, it's number 182. So if we're going to be nationally relevant, there are some things that we absolutely have to do. I mean, certainly winning is one of them. But beyond that, the two things that we really need to do is we need in all of our sport programs reach postseason play and then have success in the postseason, because that's when you have the most people paying attention to your program. So that's the importance of bowl games and NCAA tournaments and winning when you have those opportunities. And then the other part is just to get on television as much as possible, because again, that is how people learn about your program. And the new football deal that we have, it's different from the standpoint that all the October games are weeknight games, and so that's been unconventional, not playing on Saturdays. But what I would say is those 4 games during the month of October that we're on national TV on either a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night, in many cases, we're the only college football game on at that time. So every sports bar in America has the WKU game on. Every sports bar in the country sees that WKU red towel logo. And, when you're on TV on a Saturday, that's still great. It's always great to be on television, but there are so many other viewing options. But during the midweek games, there aren't. And so the exposure we get from that is obviously great for our current team and our players, but it's also great for alumni who aren't here to be able to see the team, and it helps tremendously in recruiting, because when players decide where they want to go, they obviously want to know if they're going to be noticed. So when they see we have a whole month of nationally televised games with essentially no competition, that helps us a lot.
Well, and I was going to ask about that, because I have noticed the last few years that we have more midweek games than weekend games, but there's a reason behind that, and that's because of that exposure that WKU can get. Well,
and for CBS and ESPN, who are our two multimedia partners on the broadcast side, they need inventory during the week. They pretty much have what they need on the weekend, so that's kind of part of the deal. They'll partner with us. They'll pay us. The trade-off is we need to play on the weeknight games, but it's just 2 home games and 2 away games. I mean, if it was the entire schedule, that'd be different. It's just 2 home and 2 away, and we've tried to make it neat. I give our president Tim Caboni credit, because for one of those 2 midweek home games, we will have a concert before the game. We did that last year with Jordan Davis. The year before, we did it with Shaq, who wanted to be called DJ Diesel when he was here. So, I mean, that just leads to, like, the overall atmosphere on campus. It enhances it, and it's been and the weather's been good so far on those, so it's been a really good thing.
Yeah, and, of course, the opening football game last season had a concert before the game with Disorderly Conduct, just crushing it out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we brought out tens of fans.
Yeah. You can add a few zeros to that.
Yeah. Hundreds of fans, but it is a great game day atmosphere at WKU. There's nothing more fun than being out there on the South Lawn before a football game and interacting with all the WKU people. And I kind of take it upon myself, and I don't know how others feel about it, but I enjoy seeing the other team people come here as well, because they're spending money.
Absolutely.
And I try to make an effort to thank them for being here, and but you're still going to get beat.
That's right. Have a good time, but leave with less points than us. That's right.
But anyhow, let's talk about NIL for a minute, because it's been a game changer, literally, in college athletics. So tell me your take on it.
Well, there's 2 parts of it, really. One I really like a lot, and that's what would be the traditional NIL, which was all this was prohibited until a couple years ago. But what I would describe as the traditional NIL is when you partner with a local business and you get product and or money, and then they get exposure. And that can be as small as somebody just getting a credit from Buffalo Wild Wings and then tweeting out how great Buffalo Wild Wings is, or it can be a car deal. I mean, or or something in between.
Yeah.
I think that is a really good thing for all athletes. What's being abused, though, and has the unintended consequences, is the second component of NIL, which you hear the term collective, and we have a collective, the Red Towel Trust, and that is what we run it the right way. I mean, we have people that donate money. We can't run it as an athletic department, but there's a board that oversees that, and money is donated, and then it's distributed back out to athletes that are of the donor's wish. And then the stipulation is that the community service is required. So, we do have a requirement along with that. Where it's being misused nationwide, though, is collectives are now being used as an incentive to get kids to transfer, which is illegal, but it's happening. Kids are being contacted and being told, hey, if you transfer from your school to school X, you can get such and such. And it's also being used in recruiting. And it really is supposed to be used to compensate athletes once they're already producing on your campus, just to essentially equate to their value. That's the area that probably needs a little bit more regulation. There's just been a lot of changes in college athletics across the board, and it's required a lot of adjustments.
And and you correct me if I'm wrong, but when NIL came about, really the courts kind of decided this, and it kind of got thrown out there quickly without a plan or a game plan on how this was all going to work. And so every state was different. And I don't know that they still have it all worked out where it's a level playing field for all universities and colleges.
No, you're 100% correct. I'll just be honest. I mean, the NCAA failed to lead. Mark Emmert, the president, they failed to lead on this issue, 4 to 5 years ago when meaningful reform was needed, and it didn't happen. And so then what ended up happening was, you've had a career in politics, there was a vacuum. There was a vacuum of leadership. And so what happened is lawyers and politicians have filled that vacuum. And so the confusing part is you have various state legislatures passing different rules state to state. And so that's really made things complicated when you're recruiting kids from other states. It's just led to a lot of chaos. And I describe it, with the transfer portal, what it is now, and that now is basically any player can transfer any year. You used to have to sit out, and you could only transfer. They'd call it a one-time transfer, where you can only transfer one time without sitting out. Then you'd have to sit out a year anytime you transfer. Now you don't. You can transfer as much as you want, and so there's massive roster turnover every year, and really it's made it very challenging for coaches to manage their roster, because if you think about pro sports, everybody has a contract, so who's going to be a free agent. Who isn't, and you can prepare for that. In college, essentially, everybody's a free agent every year, and so you don't necessarily know who's coming back. And it's almost like telling somebody, okay, I need you to drive from here to Lexington, but there's no speed limit, there's no stop signs, there's no stoplights, and there's no police. So get on the road and have at it. It's just there's no parameters, and it's just led to chaos. It really has.
So I didn't realize that it was kind of the Wild West. You can transfer as many times as you want now. So that explains some of the things I've seen lately, because I was like, well, I thought that guy's already transferred once. But he's so can universities do contracts with student athletes?
Not yet. Now that is coming a year from now. There's still some details that have to be finalized, but a year from now, schools will be able to directly share some of their revenue with athletes.
Okay.
Now it used to be the Power 5. The Pac-12 is no longer. So now it's the Power 4. They are by this settlement, this recent court case settlement, they are going to be required to do that. They have to do it. The other conferences can opt in or opt out. They're not required. Initially, we won't be doing that.
Okay.
But what I would point out is, because we're already investing more than we ever have into student athlete centric areas. Literally in the last 3 to 5 years, we've increased our investment significantly in strength and conditioning, nutrition, sports medicine, mental health, academic advising, the collectibles. The NIL, like we said, all those entities, that directly impact student athletes. We're investing in. So right now, that's kind of the extent of what we'll do. But I think as time moves on, that probably will change also. And
WKU Athletics recently had an NIL director win a big award. You talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, Colin Stalker, he and Audrey Griffin, and that's a great thing that we have. Those two do a terrific job, and we have 2 full-time people that are in our career development office, and their role really is to help athletes maximize their earnings opportunities while they're here, but then also prepare them for life after athletics. Because this has always been the case, but what we don't want is somebody to come here and then the day their eligibility ends and they graduate or they leave school have no idea what they want to do and be out in the wilderness. So those two are really helpful in lining athletes up with internships and helping them with job interviews and just a whole preparation aspect of getting them ready for life after college. And also, like I said before, helping them make some money while they're here as well.
And I know the answer to this, but you all are providing financial training advising, because they got to pay taxes on this stuff.
Absolutely, and that's the benefit of what we call the Hilltopper Local Exchange. It's no cost to businesses, but businesses can sign up for that, and that enables them to correspond directly with athletes. Might be a negotiation, but it might just be, hey, we have this opportunity, but it allows them to contact our athletes in a legal, fair manner. And then what happens is any business deal that originates through the Hilltopper Local Exchange, the company that oversees all that for us, at the end of the year, they consolidate all the deals that every athlete has had, and they generate a 1099. So that helps from the tax standpoint. It's just one document that says this is everything that you brought in, this is what the taxes are. And throughout that process, yes, we are talking to them about, hey, don't spend every cent of this, because as we all know, taxes are a part of all
you need
income.
To keep about 30% off
That's
to the
right.
side there. But it's you got all this here, and you're like, oh, I got to put some aside for that. But and they'll figure it out. I mean, and I know you've got people, or there are people that help advise them on those types of situations. You talked about your student athletes and some of the things you do with helping them with their academics. Right now, a 3.17 cumulative GPA, the fourth highest GPAs over the last 4 years. Talk about, they're getting an education too. It's not all about athletics.
Well, that's why they're here.
That's right.
I mean, we do recruit true student athletes who are here to get a degree, and I give our coaches credit because they do that. They recruit true student athletes, and we monitor that, make sure they progress towards a degree, because as we all know, a very small percentage of athletes goes on to play professionally, and even those who do, it usually is not a very long career. So we want them to have their degree, and we want them to have opportunities when they leave here, and I'm very happy to see that's happening. Our current graduation success rate is 88%. That's the highest it's ever been in the history of WKU Athletics. So I feel like that's a key thing that fortunately we've won a lot more than we've lost, and we are winning championships, but they're going to win regardless because they're going to leave here with a meaningful degree, which obviously positions them very well for life after athletics.
Yeah. So you talked about all the championships that have been won over the last 12 years or so. Talk about some of the sports we don't hear about as much. We hear a lot, and here we hear a lot about football, basketball, and volleyball. Some about baseball and softball. But there's track and field, there's soccer, there's swim. Is there swimming?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. Okay. So, but there's a lot of other things happening. Talk about some of the other sports.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because this past year actually
golf
was one of the better years that we've had from the individual sport standpoints. For the first time in the history of WKU Athletics, we had a men's golfer, Luke Fuller, and a women's golfer, Katie Craig, both make the NCAA regionals.
Wow.
We had never had a women's golfer make the NCAA regionals, and Katie Craig has now done it the last 2 years, which is remarkable. And the good news is she still has another year left, so
awesome.
she can go for a three-peat. And Luke was really just a great story. We hadn't had an individual win a conference championship since 2006, and Luke Fuller came to Western Kentucky as a walk-on. And then 5 years later, the final match of his college regular season career is a championship-winning match at the conference tournament. He was the conference individual champion.
Wow.
And then he went on to the NCAA regional. So really, that's a true storybook ending there for him. And then on the track side, we had a dual sport athlete, Katie Eisenbarger, who came here to play volleyball and was very successful. And in her volleyball career was named all-conference multiple times and helped us to multiple conference championships and NCAA tournaments, but also ran track. And she actually was an All-American in both the indoor and outdoor track in the high jump. And so I really think when she's eligible, she's a likely Hall of Famer for our Athletics Hall of Fame, just given the success she's had at the national stage in multiple sports.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, of course, baseball season had a good year.
Very good.
Really excited. I actually called a game.
Yes. Thank you for doing that.
Y'all. I was like the last guy on the list, but I appreciate Randy calling me every year to come and add some color. What little I know, but a lot of fun out there at the ballpark every year. Great product on the field. Great team, great coach. I really like the new coach.
Mark Reardon's done a phenomenal job. I mean, he really has.
I say new, but he's been here a couple of years.
Well, too, and when he came here, the year before he came here, we came in dead last, 12th place, and we were 18 and 36. And in the 2 years he's been here, we've come in 4th and 3rd place. and we've had back-to-back seasons of 30-plus wins for the first time since 2010 and 2011.
That's awesome.
And he's also has a great coaching staff. Rob Fournier and Dylan Napoleon's our pitching coach. And the three of them have just done a terrific job. They really, truly have. And the neat thing about baseball is, there's a lot of attention being made on the indoor facility that we're building on campus. And certainly, football will be the primary tenet of that. But the neat thing is all sport programs will use that. But because of the footprint of that building, the existing baseball clubhouse and hitting facility have to be torn down, but they'll be built back within the footprint of the new structure. And so baseball will have a brand new locker room. All the coaches' offices will be new. Their team meeting room will be new. They'll have their own weight room. And so baseball will have a great setup when all that's done.
And it's right next to the ballpark.
Absolutely. Right up. They'll literally walk out of the building and be 20 feet from their dugout.
Well, and you talked about some of the physical upgrades and additions happening within WKU Athletics. Can you go through some of the things that are happening with your capital program and the timeline on when we can expect to see some of these facilities opening up, including the football stadium?
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 10 years, we've done almost $15 million in either new construction or renovations of our existing athletic facilities. In a lot of cases, that was redoing locker rooms and player areas, coaching areas. But we also added the Philip Hatchett Golf Center back in 2021. And then in this past fall, we opened up the soccer softball complex out where their fields are, and so that gave them a home actually where they now play, which was huge. And the two things that were missing, though, are now underway, and that was a press box at the football stadium. The football stadium was built in 1968, and the press box on the old side was a 1968 press box, and I think the football program's come a long way, since then. And so to have a new state-of-the-art press box for obviously out-of-town media and local media and the broadcasting network will be huge. But also it'd be great for the coaching staffs of both teams, because right now they have to go up to the stands to get in the press box, and now to be on the what we call the new side. And so that'll be great. And then really what I call the granddaddy of them all is the Hilltopper Fieldhouse, which construction's already begun, and that'll be awesome. That'll be done next summer, the summer of 2025, and every sport program can use that. The band will also be able to practice in there, and awesome. That'll be huge. And that whole area has just been transformed. When the field house is done, that's on the athletic side of Avenue of Champions, and on the other side with the South Lawn, you have the new College of Business that'll be done. And so it'll be neat for people to drive down the Avenue of Champions in the summer of 2025, because if they haven't been here in a while, they'll probably think they're lost. It'll just look that much different.
It's funny because when alumni do come back, after they haven't been here for a few years, it's inevitable. One of them is going to say, it's changed so much.
Yeah. But
it's still, in my opinion, the most beautiful campus in college athletics, academics, especially in Kentucky. By far, I think it's the most beautiful campus.
Yeah.
And it helps to have everything sort of contained within that footprint of WKU. It's easy to walk around and get from the dorm to the ball field or whatever you're going to do. So having all that right there is going to be awesome.
Definitely. It's great for recruiting, and it obviously helps with player development once athletes are here.
And obviously it has an economic impact as well.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's going to be probably $50 million when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
The cost of both of those combined, in addition to what we've already done.
And I know people hear $50 million for athletics, and talk about this a little bit, because I don't think most people understand that in university world, every dollar has a boundary. And even though there's $50 million in capital projects that are happening, whether it's with athletics or academics or whatever, WKU Athletics is not taking money from academics at all. And I think a lot of people don't get that sometimes. And I know that's a hard to explain, but every dollar has a boundary.
Yeah, the vast majority of what we have done has either been through private donations or the Hilltopper Athletic Foundation support. Sometimes they've taken out a loan, but that's really been what the vast majority of it has been. And the facility part's really important for us, because we aren't going to be able to outspend everybody, but we can out-experience people. And I think the facilities are a big part of that. If the athletes know if they can come here and they like where they live and they like where they train and they like where they play,
and it's as good as any other college program.
Right, and it's all within walking distance. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that makes a big difference versus if you don't have those things and/or you're having to get on a shuttle bus and drive across town. So getting those finished will obviously be great for now, but it'll also well position WKU Athletics really for the next generation.
So we're in the middle of summer, getting ready for a big football season. First game of the season, traveling down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Yeah, that's people say, why are you playing Alabama? Well, the first answer is there's 1.9 million reasons why. That's the payday.
Kind of like the Ohio State game,
right? But it's honestly it's beyond that. I mean, it's like you ask our players, they like playing these kind of games because it's a nationally that's going to be on ESPN on Saturday night, and it's the first game of Kalen DeBoer's regime in Alabama. There'll be a huge TV audience for that. That's a huge TV audience for us. I mean, that's great exposure for us. And they also want to compete against the best. And I go back and I give the example when Forrest Lamp was drafted by the San Diego Chargers, and I know now it's the LA Chargers, but it was the San Diego Chargers then. Their general manager, they drafted him early in the second round and cited like a big reason why they drafted him was how well he performed against another first-round draft choice from Alabama, one of their defensive linemen. And they saw that on tape, and it was a whole game of Forrest going against a first-round draft choice from Alabama on the defensive side. Well, if we don't play Alabama that year, that tape doesn't exist. And they probably don't have as good a feeling about him watching him against the other people we play than that. So Malachi Corley goes in the third round to the Jets. But, he played well against Ohio State last year. Mm-hmm. He played well against Michigan State. He's played well against Indiana. He's played well against Auburn. I mean, all those games. And so that really helps our players. And our program is ready for a challenge like that. I mean, it's you remember the days. I mean, we had a period, it's hard to believe, from 2008 to 2010. We went 2-10, 0-12, and 2-10. I mean, 4-32 over a 3-year period. And so now to be in a situation where we've won a bowl game 7 of the last 10 years, and only Alabama, Georgia, and Wisconsin have more bowl wins in the last 10 years than Western Kentucky.
How about that?
Our program has come a long, long way, and we're ready for challenges like that.
And I know the players enjoy it too because, like you said, not everybody's going to go pro.
No.
But at some point, they're going to be able to say, you know what? I remember going down to Alabama and playing on that field and having that experience and being a part of college game day and, all the fun things that go along with that, the experience.
They love it. They really do. And I know a ranking came out the other day. It's a hypothetical thing, but it just listed the top 25 toughest venues to play in college football. And we've played at a lot of those, and so that's something that like our players can tell their kids about and tell their grandkids about when they played at Alabama, Tennessee,
against
Auburn, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State. Yeah, all those games. I mean, it's something they'll always remember.
That's awesome. Well, looking forward to August 31st. It should be a lot of fun. And the great thing about that game is we travel well down there.
We do.
The last time we played down there, we all went, and it was like 150 degrees in Alabama heat.
It may be hot again, but at least it's a night game this time around. So that'll be good.
We did well the first half.
Yeah. One other, if I could, real quick, one other quick plug in the fall, because obviously you're talking about the football opener, but volleyball their home game is going to be against Tennessee, who we played in the NCAA tournament last year. So that's a huge home game, and you're talking about a volleyball program that there's over 300 volleyball programs in the country. There's only 12 that have both won an NCAA tournament match and finished the season ranked in the top 25 in each of the last 5 years, and we're one of those 12. And that's awesome. This year's Travis Hudson's 30th year as our head coach, so we're going to kind of celebrate that whole 30th
like 40,
year.
Right?
I know, he might be here 50 years. And I tell him he doesn't rebuild, he just reloads. So hopefully he keeps reloading and he's here for a while. But we will celebrate the 30th year. It's a huge, like I said, home opener to begin the season. And it'll make an exciting fall. I mean, obviously in soccer as well. I mean, there'll be a lot of neat things happening.
And a lot of good things happening with women's basketball too.
No doubt. I mean, I think women's basketball will be much improved, and men's basketball has the bulk of the roster back that went to the NCAA tournament last year. And so, certainly our intent there is to pick up where we left off.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Todd, did I leave anything out?
No, I think we hit it. We checked a lot of boxes, Jim.
Well, we appreciate all you do for WKU
you.
and the economic impact that athletics has on our community. I don't think people really understand what that does. And we talk about WKU as a whole being an economic engine for this community and for this region of the state. But athletics is a big part of that, and we appreciate all you do.
Well, thank you.
Hey, thanks for being on the DeCesare Group Podcast.
My pleasure. It was fun. Let's do it again.
Okay. Thanks again to WKU Athletic Director Todd Stewart for joining us this week on the DeCesare Group Podcast, and thank you for listening as well. Hey, if you like what you hear, please share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review and share your feedback with us as well. You can follow the DeCesare Group across all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and now YouTube. The DeCesare Group Podcast is produced by the DeCesare Group, a public relations and consulting firm based in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Our engineer and the guy still looking for an NIL deal is Justin Too Sexy DeCesare, with content contributions from Brooke Mattingly and Amy DeCesare. I'm Jim DeCesare, and join us again next time for the DeCesare Group Podcast.